welcome to the Caspian Podcast, the podcast of the Caspian Post with me, Mark Elliott. This is the Caspian Podcast with me, Mark Elliott, and I'm back with Gela Bezhuashvili. It was so exciting the first time, we just couldn't stop. So we thought, well, let's just continue. Now, Gela, you were just telling me in the last podcast when we met about the wonderful idea that you had about a dreamy future where Azerbaijan, Armenia and Georgia might one day come together and hopefully form a sort of a little mini Benelux, a sort of a customs union and so forth. But after the end of the podcast, you started telling me that actually that idea had already been floated several years ago. So can I take it back and tell us that story? Because that's a very exciting thing that I hadn't heard about.
Yes, Mark. I mean, the whole idea, and it's not a theoretical thing. I mean, we've been talking about with our colleagues on the highest level in Yerevan and Baku, and the president and I, we were very serious about it. Our point was that in this globalization economy, you cannot compete with your small resources, because we all are a relatively small economic size. Is small. So we need to combine the efforts. We need to combine our strengths, and we need to create a one market, one economy, a regional economy that will be competitive on a global market. So you have fantastic examples of such unions. You have European, not only European Union, there is a smaller Western European Union within the European Union. You have a Benelux. You have a Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, creating three successful, small relatively economies, but very competitive when they are put together. So it's not a theoretical. Yes, it is. It sounds like very naive, but I think it's very doable. I mean, why you need now in 21st century when you can control your borders with electronic surveillance? You don't need borders, at least economic borders. You need the less tariffs. You need abolished tariffs and some duties in order to strengthen small and medium-sized enterprises of your countries. Three of us will be much more stronger than individuals. There is a corridor of not only goods and services from Asia to Europe, but also the oil and gas from Caspia goes through this territory, and all these things together needs to be put in one context of one regional economic bloc or union that will make the life of every single individual and citizen of Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan richer, more prosperous. So this is not a theory. It can be done, especially now when these very serious geopolitical changes have happened very recently. I think there is a chance and there is an avenue for us to explore this opportunity.
And just in case people are watching this much later, what we're talking about presumably is that just at the end of 2020, Azerbaijan has reclaimed the lands that it lost in the wars of the early 1990s. So that gives a chance, I guess, to go back to a sort of status quo. Obviously, one of the troubles with all kind of war is bad, but in a sense, it brings perhaps a stability that at least goes back to the state of international law in which those lands were always technically perceived to be under the control of Azerbaijan. Do you think you having dealt, okay, it's a decade ago, but you have very strong relations with both countries. Do you think that Armenia, in a strange way, may actually come out having done better for losing it? Obviously, it's a terrible shock in the short term, but to have the status quo where they're no longer an occupying force, that may actually long term be beneficial for Armenia?
Look, you need to see the any developments in perspective. If you will be prisoners of your beliefs or your previous story, then your way forward will be much more difficult than in assessing a current moment in a perspective. So the perspective is here. Perspective is here for Armenia. Perspective is here for Azerbaijan, and perspective is here for Georgia. Not only for us, but also for the larger region. With all our differences, with all the geopolitical differences in the region. When we talk about the region, Mark, if you name the countries, you will see, wow, that's a bunch of the problem. You have in the neighborhood, you have Iran, you have Syria, you have Russia, you have Turkey. I mean, in these big players are now looking for opportunity in this big geopolitical picture. So when we look at us, the small countries that are still struggling for our independence, and especially during this pandemic, when the economies in all three countries, I'm not talking about the world economy, small countries, so all three economies are in a bad shape. So you need to put it in the perspective and say what we can do together, actually. Opening the borders, opening the avenues, opening the transportation corridors will just make us stronger. Will just make us more competitive. Maybe we can together overcome some of the difficulties that were unimaginable some time ago. So my take is that we need to assess the current moment from the perspective. And look at it in a perspective.
Now, I mean, maybe this is a difficult question to ask you, but and I realize you finished as Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia just before the war in 2008, where essentially lands which had become somewhat distant from Georgia then were essentially definitively conquered, perhaps, I'm not sure if that's the legal term, but by Russia. And again, that must have been a terribly painful thing for a government to suffer. But on the other hand, and obviously this is an awful thing for the people who've lost their homes and have become refugees or IDPs. But again, perhaps we can see a silver lining in that in a sense, by stabilizing a most unpleasant but certain status quo, possibly gave Georgia more chance to say, okay, well, we've got what we've got, let's drive ahead. Am I imagining that, or is that how, I suppose, what else could you do?
No, well, this is I think a very natural and the right reflection. Actually, I quit my post as a foreign minister, but I went immediately to the less public position, and I was appointed as a chief of Georgian intelligence, and during the war I was director of intelligence. So it's less public work, but still very challenging. And
I'm sure there's lots of questions we can't ask you.
At least, and especially in a period when you are in a war with Russia, can you imagine this? So, but this is a very difficult question and a very difficult time. When I recollect it, I always try to first of all ask myself, because I'm a trained diplomat. My job is to prevent the war. My job is to make an agreement and not allow militaries to do their planning in action. So, and I'm just asking myself, and probably my Russian counterparts also should ask themselves where we failed, what we haven't done enough not to allow this to happen. But that happened, and it changed many things in the region. We don't have a diplomatic relationship with Russia. All economic activities are closed almost. It's a almost deadlock situation for Russia too, because recognizing these two provinces of Georgia, I don't think that it gives a lot of credit to Russia or puts the Russia in the right perspective in the region. So somehow there are no winners here. There are no winners. And we need to create a situation And I don't have an answer to this question yet, but we need to find a situation when we can find appropriate format when everybody gets some wins and not losers. So we need to create this environment. I think slowly this it sounds strange, but this pandemic situation in the world, it changes a lot some people's perceptions about some of their paradigms, some of their thoughts. They put it in a different perspective. So we might come up with something that will be a solution and beneficial for all stakeholders in the region.
So let's imagine if this Caucasian Union or whatever it is, the sort of dream scenario, it may be, say, 10, 20 years, could you see then Abkhazia and South Ossetia sort of rejoining? It's sort of a bit like happened in Northern Ireland, that things calmed down once the EU was there. Could we see perhaps a way of diplomatically blurring the lines after a little while and hopefully welcoming Abkhazia and South Ossetia back into the fold?
No, I see it exactly in that perspective. But you need to do your work, of course, and hard work, because you need to engage here also those who are not very happy with this idealistic approach. So you need to work with Russia, you need to work with the neighbors, we need to work with others to explain that the gains are much more higher here than they can even imagine. So you need to engage a lot of people. You need to persuade a lot of people inside and outside. So some work needs to be done, of course, but it is possible. I see this from this perspective, and I truly believe that the time will come for that.
Right, and just a silly, but almost jokey thing, but one of this is slightly related to your previous time as director of intelligence, but it's a bit of a joke but I don't know, is it true or is it not true that the regime before yours, when where the actual president had himself a car with the number plate 007. Do you know, is that actually true, or is that just a myth?
I don't remember, but I don't remember, but I think nothing is wrong with that. You know, my car plate has a 007 even now. So, but
are you
it's
serious?
My personal one. So
oh, how fun. Well, no, but I mean, this was for Shevardnadze, who apparently had specifically, rather than have 001 as president, had 007. I don't know. This was a rumor.
I don't know, Mark. I don't really know, but you know, it's
the kind of fun thing. Isn't it terrible? I take these beautiful geopolitical issues and I turn it to James Bond. I'm so sorry. And
the James Bond is always, you know, in the geopolitical game, always present. You know, always present and danger.
Yes, that's so true. And let's just finish off. Now, you're saying you've since become much more involved in education, and there's lots we can say about education, but for now we don't have much time for that. But just tell me the other you also dipped your toe a little into the world of wine, and for anyone that's been to Georgia, they'll know that wine and passion are go together in Georgia. Where is your...
I mean, the wine is our culture, it's our identity, and that's why we some years ago we partnered our friends in owning a vineyard in Kakheti, in Tsinandali, in one of the best places for wine in Kakheti. And our partners are the family of very famous Georgia prima ballerina Nina Ananiashvili, who is director of Georgian Ballet Theater. And now on our bottles you have a flying ballerinas or ballerinas sleeping in Kvevri. I will introduce this wine to the next occasion when you travel here. And by the way, what it gives me a pleasure, because when you are working in a vineyard, when you are working with the grapes, when you are squeezing the juice, when you are making a wine, this is a process, a reminiscence of your identity, of who you are, you know, of your ancestry, of your strengths, of your weakness. Everything is there. I mean, it's a great philosophy, and I truly believe that winemaking is not just a winemaking. It's a great philosophy.
Yes, it's grounding. It brings you back to your roots. It puts you in touch with the real world.
We just produced a very unique variety for Georgia of grapes as a Malbec. We have a Malbec in Kakheti, in our vineyard, and we produced Malbec in Kvevri. So come over, taste the wine, which you cannot taste anywhere else in the world, because Malbec in Georgia, in Kvevri, is produced only in the Chateau Lanina, which is our company.
Well, I can't wait. Once again, Gela, thank you so much. What an extraordinary chat, going all the way from Trans-Caucasian unity to the glories of Kvevri wine. Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Caspian podcast from the Caspian Post.